Hey, welcome back, Doug Pagitt Radio on AM 950 and over at DougPagittRadio.com. If you want to keep up on these conversations, like the one I'm having with Jana Riess, who's the author of Flunking Sainthood, you can do that over at the archive section of DougPagittRadio.com. Jana's book is terrific. You should buy it. We have 2 copies that we're going to give away to the very fine listeners here, with the assumption that after you read it, you're going to want to give it to somebody else and buy yourself a fresh copy. Because you're people like that. The book is so good, you're going to read it and you're going to want more. Give us a call at 952-946-6205, and we're going to give the books away to callers 3 and 17. 952-946-6205 if you'd like a copy of Jana Riess's book, Flunking Sainthood. It's a memoir, a year of breaking the Sabbath, forgetting to pray, and still loving my neighbor. Hey, and let me remind you, folks, if you're looking for a top-quality craft today, head over to 46th Street and Blaisdell Avenue. There's a craft fair going on. It's fantastic. And the proceeds, 15% of all the money that's taken in today, is going to go to support Freedom Firm, an effort to help young women and young girls who are experiencing the pains of the sex slave industry around the world. So fantastic! You're going to get the finest in quality handmade gifts, but you're also going to be able to help these folks out. So callers 3 and 17 at 952-946-6205 for a copy of Flunking Sainthood. Now, Jana, if I could borrow your professional perspective in some other areas, I'd like to do that. You are one who writes, thinks about religion, engages in religion, and so on a broad national scale, including running a blog over at BeliefNet.com/flunking sainthood. I wanted to ask you what you see happening in religion in America today. Are you okay chatting about that for a bit?
Sure. There's a wonderful book called American Grace that came out last year. It's written by 2 men, one of whom is the author of Bowling Alone, if you remember that book, which was pretty seminal. So American Grace chronicles in exhaustive sociological and demographic detail what's going on in American religion today. And one of the biggest trends that sociologists are seeing is what's called disaffiliation. It used to be that you had about between 5 and 7% of Americans who claimed no religion when surveyed about it. It's now 14%.
Interesting.
And it has happened very quickly. It shows no sign of dissipating. In fact, the trend toward disaffiliation is expected to rise because a higher proportion of younger people claim disaffiliation than older people. So it's only going to grow. And so, this has a lot of people, clergy and people of faith, wringing their hands. How do we get people back into synagogues and mosques and churches and temples and everything else when pretty much on the weekends they'd rather stay home and watch football? And that's now socially acceptable to do. And it's a valid question.
It sure is. And in some ways, I think your book is illustrative of the idea that people don't pick one particular stream and stay in it their entire lives. Like your background, growing up as someone who wasn't religiously engaged until, was it college that you first got involved in religion in a personal kind of way?
It was my freshman year of high school. I converted at a youth group retreat.
Oh, there you go. So you were, a burgeoning teenager. I was the same way. I didn't grow up in a family that had any religion, and now I'm into it. Other people went the other way. They started very deeply embedded in religion in their family systems, and now are out of it. And then there's people like you who say, well, you know what I want to do? I want to try religious practices from a variety of traditions. I'll try a Ramadan fast, and I'll try a Jewish Orthodox Sabbath, and I'll try Catholic spirituality, and I'll try Bible study in this new and fresh way. And so we do live in a world where people realize, man, just because I grew up in a particular stream doesn't mean I have to stay there. Do you have any sense about what that's going to mean for religion in America? Do you Jana's perspective as looking at things as a professional religious observer? Do you have a sense about where that's going to take us?
Well, my degree is in the history of religion in America.
Well, there you go.
This is not actually
you asked the right person, Doug.
Okay, so it's not all that new, really? Okay, talk a bit about that.
I only brought up the degree to say that I specialized in the 19th century, and the 19th century in particular, probably more than any since the 2nd century, was known as an age of spiritual seeking. We had a lot of new religious movements sprout up in America, and we also had a lot of conversion, people going from one to another. greater roles for women, for example, doing exhortation or preaching, being itinerants, that kind of thing. So it was a very energetic time. And I would say that even though this trend toward disaffiliation is very different, and certainly there's no sense that there is an established religion in America anymore, if there ever was one, still, the idea that people are doing a cafeteria spirituality is not new. We've actually been doing that for more than a century.
So do you think that we're going to see in our day? So if in the 1800s people were generating whole new kinds of spirituality and spiritual communities, and whole religions were born in that period of time, do you think that same thing will be happening in this age, or do you think we're moving into kind of a post-religious age where people aren't going to spend their time and energy on developing new religious outlets?
The only thing that I worry about, I am very supportive of the idea that we do need to be looking to other traditions, not just our own, in order to build understanding, in order to build respect. We live in a multi-faith nation, and the best way to really understand each other is to get to know each other well. And one way to do that is by saying, I want to try to live like this person for 30 days or however long it is. But the thing that I worry about is the individualism, the isolation of some of these movements. I think that we are often our best selves in community, and when we believe that we sort of have everything already, we know everything we need to know, and we don't need to spend time with people who disagree with us.
Nice.
That's a real concern to me. It only increases the polarization that we're seeing in this country when people can isolate themselves from each other to that degree.
Yeah, and I guess in previous times, and you're obviously the expert on the 1800s and so on, but I guess there was less opportunity to keep yourself cut off from others at a time when people were not traveling to the same degree, they weren't accessing information in such limited bits, that you sort of were forced by situation to have to be around people of difference. Whether or not you allowed their ideas to be meaningful to you was a different question, but you were at least infected and affected by that, and you couldn't silo yourself in such a self-confident way. Do you think that's part of what's going on?
I do, and even the way that we access information now is kind of precision targeted. It's not that the newspaper's delivered to the front door. We read it cover to cover the way that our parents or grandparents may have done, and they exposed themselves to a lot of stories that they may not have sought out. But today, most of the news that we get is maybe even through our Facebook feed. So that's filtered through our friends and what they think is important.
Right.
So we're already having these kinds of silos built. I like that word that you used. And we need to go out of our way in order to access a broad range of perspective.
And do you sense that there's some kind of spiritual vitality going on in the world, or do you think it's in the United States at least, or do you think there's a sort of a dissipating sense of spiritual engagement? Do you have any sense of that?
I don't. I think that I don't have a sense that it's dissipating. I think there's a lot of energy around spiritual growth. People write to me, people talk to me about wanting to be closer to God. The question for them is, what's the best way to do that? And the suspicion that they often have is that there's not just one way to do that. And I happen to share that opinion, that there's not just one way to do that. So I don't think that the energy for spirituality is declining. I just think that organized religion, as it has been traditionally defined, is definitely shifting. Yeah,
I do too. And I have the sense that, and some of it's just a bit of, of memory enhancement, right? Where I think back to the 1960s and 70s and some of the 80s, and there was a real sense of like spirituality and different explorations of different kind of spiritual endeavors, with Indian religions and New Age kinds of influences, and even in Christian traditions and in Catholic tradition especially, there was kind of a fresh movement of Holy Spirit kind of activity, and that seems to have kind of captured that period of time. But now it seems that people are just much more just seem to have in sort of the broad social zeitgeist, and sort of the cultural meme of our world. That it just seems like less people are into a kind of spiritualism, but I don't know if that's just because I'm in a small little, my own small little corner of the universe over here. I wondered if you were sensing or seeing anything related to that.
Well, first of all, you totally get bonus points for using zeitgeist in conversation.
Zeitgeist and meme, yeah, right there in conversation.
Yes, and that too. Okay, I'm suitably impressed.
Right. I don't know what those words mean.
Oh my God! Just stop. Okay,
that's the sidekick. I don't know what those words mean, but I've heard smart people use them.
I think you even used them correctly. I think you deserve a brownie.
Oh my!
Thank you
really
very much.
do.
That's Jana
And now
Riess,
I've actually forgotten your question because I was thinking about zeitgeist.
Well, that's Jana Riess, who has great opinion and discernment.
Oh, right.
And her book is called Flunking Sainthood, and I'm telling you, folks, it's worth picking up and following Jana Riess as a whole. So find her online. She keeps a blog over at beliefnet.com, which is a big conversation about belief across the spectrum. And her site is called Flunking Sainthood over at beliefnet.com/Flunking Sainthood. That's Jana Riess, and you should pick up her book, A Year of Breaking the Sabbath, Forgetting to Pray, and Still Loving My Neighbor. Jana, thanks for all that you do, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much. It was fun.
You bet. Hey, folks, if you're in the Twin Cities and you can make your way over to this craft sale, and I'm not just pushing it. I don't make any money off this craft sale, but if you do stop by, tell them we'll give you a book because we're glad that you're over there. Glad that you're supporting the craftier people of our society, because we're going to talk about this in the Right On segment, because there's something good about artists joining together with those people who are trying to bring about social change in the world that we live in. And we don't get enough of that in our world, frankly. There's just not enough of that going on, and these are good people who have come together over on 46th Street and Blaisdell Avenue. Find Carol. You'll see huge signs. I mean, you can't miss it. It's like a car dealership over there. Huge signs and the big blow-up balloons, the whole deal. Well, everything but the blow-up balloons. But big sign, you can find the craft fair. You can find people who have made crafts from all around the world, and it's worth stopping in at 46th Street and Blaisdell Avenue, just west of 35W over in South Minneapolis. Open until 8 o'clock tonight. So you still have plenty of time, but starting in 15 minutes, music and massage included in the craft fair. Brought to you by Doug Pagitt Radio and AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Stick with us. We're going to be back here with the Right On after the break.